What's the difference between the JPEG of an Olympus and a Canon? Well, that's the question I'm going to try to answer in this video. I recently posted a video about the differences or the quality of these two cameras. On that video, I had a comment from someone that asked me, what about the JPEGs? And I thought it was a really good point because, is there a difference between the JPEGs? I had a Google and tried to find out what people were saying about the differences, but there wasn't much stuff in there. AI told me that I should expect a JPEG to have slightly better colors than my Olympus. However, it also said the Canon should give me better skin tones. So I thought I'd come out and try to do that test, do a comparison between the two and see which one is better. The challenge is that obviously it's subjective because, it's not whether they're better or not, it's which one I prefer. And it would be the same for you if you were doing this. But I tried to be as least subjective as I could and I'll compare the two cameras and the JPEGs it provides. Now that video I did, that comparison I did between these two cameras wasn't particularly fair at the time because all I had was that, and as I've got now, is the 1855 kit lens with Canon. And I was trying to compare the quality image with my 25mm f1.8 Olympus premium lens, which was never going to be a fair comparison because this is always going to be sharper than the Canon. But believe it or not, there wasn't a massive amount of difference in it. And the difference really was the lens. And the lens really does make a massive difference when it comes to comparing cameras because all the sensor on a camera is doing is just recording information. That's if you're going to use it for RAW. But there will be a difference, or there might be a difference with the JPEG because it depends on what the processor does to the image when it receives it in the camera. And that will be interesting to see the differences. Of course, this video is never going to be scientific, and what I'm going to do is take a picture same picture with each camera, and to try to get the same focal length. This is 25mm. I'm going to have to use about a 31mm on this Canon. At least the sensors are reasonably similar size. Take these pictures, and then when I get home, I'll have a look at the pictures on my computer as JPEGs. I won't need to edit them. And we can have a look to see which ones we think are the nicer or not nicer. And I'll add my opinion, and hopefully if you can see them as well, you can form your own opinion, and your opinion might be completely different to me. And that's the nice thing about this, that we could compare this. Of course, as I said, this is the Olympus is a professional grade camera. It's pretty good. It's really impressive. Whereas the Canon 100D is an intermediate DSLR, so obviously we're not really comparing apples with apples, but we can do this anyway, and just for fun, just to see what the difference is, and we all might be surprised. Who knows? Yeah, the interesting thing about JPEGs and me taking photos as an example is that I take my photos normally just for social media, for Instagram. So I take a photo, I go home. I take it as raw, I go home, I edit it into a JPEG, and then I post it on social media. So in a sense, you could argue, what on earth am I doing? Taking raw photos, edit them, changing them, compressing them, doing all these things, and then posting it on social media as a compressed JPEG. I might as well just take the photo as a JPEG and just post that. And that probably would actually suffice. It would probably be good enough, to be honest. Posting a picture of a JPEG, though, takes a bit of the fun away, takes a bit of the art out, because a third of photography is in the editing. There's composing the image, taking the image and editing it. And the editing part is, for some people, me too, is as much fun as taking the photo. Trying to manipulate the photo and change it into something that I like is really important. That's why I do it. And that's why I'll probably continue to do it. But it will be interesting to see what these JPEGs look like. Of course, a RAW file is all the raw data that's captured on the sensor, the whole dynamic range. You've got all the information you can use to edit your image. You can bring down the highlights, bring up the shadows, sharpen your image, do all those sorts of things. You can do that yourself. Whereas a JPEG is done, all that's done for you. The camera's processor does all that editing. It sharpens the image, it brings down the highlights, it brings up the shadows, it does all that for you and presents you with a compressed file with much less data, and it's very much smaller. And that's the difference. Taking the picture and using the raw file, I think is really nice, but equally, is there any benefit? Could we just get away with using a JPEG, especially for social media? Now, my challenge is trying to take a picture at night where everything's dim and dark and there's not much colour. So I'm going to try to find a couple of compositions with some colouring, because we really want to test the colours. That's sort of the main part of this test. So I'm going to look around the Bailgate area of Lincoln where I am now and see if I can find something that's reasonably colourful. Don't know how I'm going to do. Quite like the look of the post office behind me, but it's not very well lit. It's nice and red, and it might make a nice subject, but it's not very bright, so it might not do very well. But I might take the picture anyway. So here's the post office, and I've got a 1 second exposure on it, f4. This is the Olympus, and I've got base ISO, and I'm going to take this shot. When all these people and the vehicles go out of the way, I'll press the shutter and take this shot, and then I'll switch the camera and put the Canon on. I've not got the 2 second timer on, probably shot I should do, but that's going to give me a JPEG and a RAW. So this is the Canon. I've got a 2.5 second exposure, f5.6 base ISO. This has got a 2 second timer on, so I'm going to give that a whirl, press the button, and let's take the Canon shot. The differences between the Canon and the Olympus is the aspect ratio. This is 3:2, where the Olympus is 4:3. Quite similar, but I will have to do some cropping to match up the images. My second image, this is quite a challenge. There's quite a dynamic range here. We've got really bright bits and we've got really dark bits. I've got 1.6 seconds f4 on the Olympus, base ISO again, and I'm just going to take this image. There's somebody in the middle of it, but I'll take this image anyway. And at 1.6 seconds, away we go. Now I'll switch cameras and I'll put the Canon on and see what we get. Now I've got the Canon on and I've got a 6 second exposure this time, f5.6. What a difference. I don't know why it's so different, but 2 second timer. I'm going to take that. There's nobody in the shot. 6 seconds. Let's see how that looks before somebody comes into image. Should be all right. And there it is on the back of the camera. That'll do nicely. That's my couple of images taken. Now it's time to go home, get warm, and have a look at the images on my computer. I'm back home now and I've warmed up. It's freezing out there, and I've got the JPEGs on my computer. So let's have a look to see which one's better or if there's any differences. Let's have a look on my computer now. The first image I took was this picture of the post office, and it's really quite interesting because immediately as soon as you look at this image, you see this picture on the left, which is the Olympus, and this picture on the right, which is the Canon. And it looks immediately that the Olympus is brighter than the Canon. The Canon looks a bit darker, but because it's darker, it looks much more saturated and the colours look richer. Whereas on the Olympus, this is my opinion, of course, and you would form a different opinion. And I think the colours don't look as good. They don't look as saturated or as vibrant or the saturated at least on the Olympus. Not only that, but it looks like maybe because of the darker image that the Canon, the highlights aren't as blown out as much. I think the highlights on the Olympus are blown out much more than on the Canon. You can see down here where this sort of sign is, it looks much more darker, and because of that, the Canon looks more pleasing. This post office sign looks clearer than it does on the Olympus. So that I definitely did use I think they were both. I used matrix metering, and they were both metered as per the matrix metering. Obviously, I went for f4 on the Olympus because that's what I felt was the right aperture, the right sweet spot for that lens. And I went 5.6 on the Canon because, once again, I thought that was the right aperture for this lens. So if we zoom in, interesting, if we zoom into the post office sign, this is quite interesting as well because it looks slightly clearer on the Olympus because of the brighter image, but I think the word post office on on the Canon looks all right. It looks perfectly fine. As a JPEG, I think it looks spot on. I think it's great. So my initial opinion, my initial assessment of these two images, I'm going to give this to the Canon because I think I prefer the Canon. I think it's handled the highlights much better than the Olympus. So this is the processing of my Olympus compared to the Canon. I think the Canon is better. So I think that's it. That first picture, I'm giving that to the Canon. So I think the Canon JPEG in this image better. Now let's have a look at the image of the pub and see what the difference there is. One thing I noticed was that the Olympus file is 9 megabytes, whereas the Canon file is 5.3. And when I've looked at the file, in fact, I can look at it here at the file info. It tells you that the Olympus file is 350 dpi, whereas the Canon file is 72 dpi. So I had a look on my camera, and I couldn't quite see where I could change that on the Olympus. You can set, small, medium, and large, etc. with the JPEG, but I couldn't actually see where it actually sets the actual DPI size, and that's why the file size is so much bigger. But let's have a look at these two pictures, though. Despite that, now immediately you can immediately tell. I think they're exactly the same as the post office. The colours on the Canon are much more richer, much more saturated. You can see from these oranges compared to the oranges on the Olympus. Olympus on the left, by the way, Canon on the right. The oranges are much nicer. They're much more saturated, and equally, I think the highlights, although it's not quite as obvious on this image, I think the highlights are definitely better on the Canon as well. So the rendering of the highlights on the Canon processor is better than the Olympus. So I zoom in here into this light, you can see that there's more orange than on the Olympus. On the Canon there's more orange. Although on this image, well, in fact, it's hard to say which one's the better, sharper image. But I think, it's fairly even. So once again, without going into too much detail, because I could spend all day looking at this, I personally prefer the Canon image. I think the Canon image is the colours are better for sure, and the highlight rendering, the highlights are better as well. It's difficult to say. They both handled the shadows, well, the dark areas. I think they both handled them quite well, but certainly the highlights up there, the Canon is better. So there you have it. I really would have liked the Olympus to do better than the Canon because I use my Olympus all the time. It's my go-to camera. That's one I prefer to use. But I've found that in this instance, in this test, the Canon 100D JPEGs, I think, are better than the Olympus EM1 Mark II JPEGs. Having said that, it's not going to sway me. It's not going to make me move away from Olympus and Micro Four Thirds, but it's definitely a consideration if it's something you're looking at and you want to get a camera that you can use for social media. Then in this particular instance, you can't go wrong with a Canon, and I think it outperforms the Olympus. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I hope you found this video interesting, and I had a look online before I created this video to see what people were saying about various JPEGs, and I couldn't find a lot. I had a look on YouTube, and mostly on YouTube it's just videos to comparing JPEGs with RAW and not JPEGs with JPEGs, and not camera systems with camera systems. So it might be helpful, it might be informative to you, and especially if you're looking to get into photography and you're wondering really what to buy and what would be good and what wouldn't. But yeah, I hope you found this interesting. If you have, I'd appreciate if you'd give it a like, and if you really would like to subscribe to the channel, that would be really, really good. And you can click down there somewhere and hit the subscribe button. That would really make my day and be fantastic. Once again, thank you very much indeed for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio.